axle system. But over and above that, the Nissan Altima V8 Supercar, new body for the Altima, new aerodynamics, as you can see, quite aggressive styling on the front and rear, and then an all-new engine under the bonnet. How much extra work was that for you?
Well, to put all of the Holden stuff straight onto this car, we could have utilised everything we have other than the transaxle gearbox and the rear end. In this case, we've had to do a full body kit, engine, so it'd be easily changing manufacturers is probably another 3 times the amount of work of a normal conversion. So huge amount of work in the time frame, and to have the car finished around the same time as a lot of the teams to have their car finished is pretty impressive.
While we're on that point, before we go to Noons and Adrian, I've had a question on Twitter from Mark Walker. Do any parts cross over from the current car to the new car? Given that you're still racing the Commodores at the moment, would suggest that there's not much crossover.
Probably only the steering wheel, if that.
If that. I'm sure it's got a new steering wheel. I don't think you send any to Abu Dhabi without a steering wheel. But we might go for a Geno question. Do Adrian or Noons have anything to offer? Perhaps we'll start with Adrian being in alphabetical order.
Well, I thought I'd ask Todd, what was the most difficult thing in this process? What was the most challenging aspect of the change?
Probably the front bar. I would say the front bar. There's just a huge amount of work in every aspect of this car. The engine, the workload is massive to design all the ancillaries and then to get the performance out of it. So that's a huge thing. But as far as the car, definitely the front bar. To get the bar to work with the dimensions of a V8 Supercar, to get it to work within the dimensions that V8 Supercars want with all of the air intakes, and also to try and respect the look of what the Altima is as a road car. To get all those things to merge into one has been quite a challenge. But I think if you look at the fascia of the road car compared to what we've achieved on the race car, we've been able to have a front bar that we're extremely happy with, and it also fits perfect with what V8 Supercars wants, and also looks in shape and styling to what the actual Altima road car is. A lot of work has gone into the front bar. The design time on this, which is over 12,500 hours, quite a lot of that, probably a third of that, has gone into that front bar.
While we're on the front bar too, something that you outlined in the announcement today was that you go into a process of the V8 Supercars now, homologating the aerodynamics of this car. There could be slight adjustments to especially the front bar, the front spoiler and under tray sort of setup, as the parity is equalised there between the aerodynamics of the Ford, Holden and Nissan.
Yeah, it's a very different body shape to adapt to the car. The overhang of the higher part of the front of the car is a lot further forward, about 75 millimetres. So the difference in dimension from the face of the front splitter is a lot less. On the other makes, the front leading edge of the splitter is about 75 millimetres further forward. So that has a lot of influence on the shape and the amount of work that you can do on the sides here. All through the centre of the bar, all of the intakes, the cross-sectional areas are identical to what the current manufacturers have in the Sport. And the area on the side here and the area underneath is really the tuning aid that we've got to work with at the aero test. So how much we actually fill the scallop in here and how much we trim the under tray determines how much drag and downforce we can get out of the car.
Okay, we might go to Noons now. Noons, any questions for Todd Kelly?
Yeah, Todd, what's the latest on the engine equalisation? I know that there's a lot of fans who are a little bit concerned that being a quad cam engine, it might have a distinct advantage in some areas over the existing pushrod engines. Where's that at in terms of equalisation for 2013 with the existing power plants?
Well, we've done around 150 hours of dyno testing so far. It's actually on the engine that's under this very bonnet. We had to stop that about a week ago to get the engine back into the build area here so the guys could fit it in the car and finish making the actual engine wiring loom to suit the car and all of the plumbing. We're about halfway through building the second engine, and that'll go on the dyno in about a week and a half to 2 weeks, and that would actually be dedicated to the dyno until we really work out exactly what spec we present that in to V8 Supercars in. To achieve the amount of power that we have in our current engine is quite a challenge. We've obviously had years and years of experience with the GM engine and the push rod and the cylinder head. A lot of time and a lot of R&D has gone into that engine. So it is a purpose-built block, a purpose-built cylinder head just for racing. And we've taken a road car engine, a road car block and a cylinder head and tried to achieve the same amount of power. So a lot of people think, oh, it's got 4 valves, you guys are going to have way too much horsepower. It's actually quite the opposite. To get a road car engine to produce the power of a purpose-designed race car is quite a challenge. But at the moment, we've probably only gone a quarter of the way through our development process with the VK56, and we're getting quite close to where our current engine is. So hopefully, when we get the second engine on the dyno, within a week or 2 of testing, we should be extremely close to where our current engine is, and the point where we can send both our Nissan VK56 engine and our Holden engine up to V8 Supercars to get signed off.
That leads to a question from Lucian on the Nissan Australia Facebook page. The reliability of the engine. Obviously, V8 Supercar events take on formats from week to week, but Bathurst 1,000 kilometres, a week of activity, 4 days on track, where the engine gets a lot of work, a lot of moving parts in a VK56. What are your thoughts on reliability as well as power?
Well, we've been very lucky with our trip to Nismo in Japan back in February. They really gave us a lot of information on all of the things that they've done to turn the VK56 road engine into a race engine. Over the course of many years, they've developed lots of different components and got a very good handle on the lifing of all those components in a race engine. So we've been able to really pick up from where they've left off with all of that side of the engine. So the reliability has been really amazing for me. We put the engine on the dyno, fired it up. It's since done over 100 hours, 150 hours of dyno running, which is many Bathursts, obviously, and we've not had a single issue. We've not even pulled the cylinder heads off or pulled the sump off the engine. It's just been constantly on the dyno, and we've not even had a drop of oil drip out of it. The reliability has been amazing.
A question relevant to the engine and the Altima. We've left the bonnet pins in it today. There's a few secret bits under the bonnet at the moment, but when fans do get to see under the bonnet of this car, the first thing they will notice, the engine is set a long way back, and same with the steering wheel and the seat in this car too. Everything's a long way back. Maybe just talk about adapting the Altima body over this chassis. There's a few quirks in there, like the seating position, the engine position. On the plus side, the fact that you haven't had to cut the roof or any of the doors of the Altima to fit over this chassis, which is a problem that other manufacturers have to accommodate when they put their body on a V8 Supercar.
Yeah, to start with the engine, the whole design of the engine in a V8 Supercar with their coordinates as far as the crankshaft centerline and getting the Altima body on the car has been quite a challenge to get the right architecture of the inlet manifold that we'd like. The engine's naturally a lot taller than what our current Holden engine is, so the way the manifolds fit under the bonnet is a little bit harder. There's a lot less space to play with, and on top of that, on this car, the actual bottom of the windscreen here is almost 200 millimetres further forward in the car than our current car. So the windscreen would normally finish around here on the Holden, so the bonnet's a lot shorter. And in Car of the Future, we've also moved the engine back 100 millimetres. So where the windscreen is here is almost halfway through the engine. So half of the engine's actually under the windscreen and half of the engine's in the bonnet area. So the days where you'd pop the bonnet up and hoist the engine out of the car is next to impossible. Once the engine's in the car, we can't even lift the airbox off the engine to fix a problem or pull something out of the airbox that might have found its way in there. So we have to actually drop the cross member of the car down and slide the whole engine out the front by dropping the cross member. So it's a little bit of a challenge, but once you get your head around how to do it, we've already geared up with a special jig that goes in and grabs the engine, and we should get down to an engine change in almost half the time in this car of what we have in our current car.
Nice. That could come in handy. That for even the best teams in V8 Supercars, sometimes there's quick engine changes between qualifying and races and things like that. To Adrian from V8X Magazine, any questions for Todd?
Well, we've touched on the safety changes with Car of the Future. Talk us through the seat position, fuel cell changing, windscreen changes. How important is that to improving the safety of the supercars?
It's a good question. There's been, well, quite a long list of things that have been over our current car. Obviously, the engine further back, the whole crushable sort of structure at the front of the car is a lot more. So the impact when you do hit something, which does happen from time to time in these race cars, it should be a lot softer kind of impact with how the front of the car will crush. It's exactly the same at the back. There's a big crash structure in behind the boot lid before the transaxle. The windscreen, I think, is, if I'm right, 8mm thick polycarbonate. So there's no glass, so you should be able to throw anything you like at 250 kilometres an hour into the screen and it will not penetrate the screen. The bar that used to go across the car is now for a little bit better visibility. We have got a little brace that goes through the centre of the screen, which isn't really a structural brace to stop anything coming in. It's more just to stop the windscreen from buffeting at all, which I don't think will be too big a problem. So a lot stronger windscreen. The driver's seat is as far back and as far in as you could possibly get. Again, what was normally a tail shaft, quite a big tail shaft with a decent joint in the middle of it, is now almost what looks like an axle. So the diameter of the prop shaft is a lot smaller. So we've been able to get the seat over further in this car. And the fuel cell, like a normal road car, or a lot of normal road cars nowadays, is actually in front of the rear wheels, housed in a nice little cavity that goes over the top of the drive shaft in a really thick, solid carbon fibre casing, then with a crushable fuel cell inside that. So to have an accident to get to the fuel cell now would be next to impossible. The days of a car stalling on the grid and having a huge fireball should be a thing of the past. So overall, the car, in theory, is a lot safer than what any of us have ever had.
A question from Twitter from Darren Cook is about the rear wing. In V8 Supercars, we have the Ford with the end mounts and the Holden, which has the central mounts. A little bit of a different take on that. We've got the central mount similar to the Holden, but pieced out centres there. Just speak about the rear wing, because it's a noticeable change, and at the moment that's the point of difference between the Ford and the Holden. And the question from Darren, did you go for the central posts?
We've tried to for a little bit about what a few of the other international Nissan racing cars have, which is a similar kind of look. As I said earlier today at the launch, there's actually 3 or 4 different options we've got for the back of the car. We've got a few different wing mount scenarios and also end plate scenarios to go through at the aero test, to the point where we could almost do an end plate for the aero test that does come down and look like an end plate mounted rear wing. So with where we've rolled the car out, the scope to kind of end up with the rear wing is pretty good. So whatever is the best performance for the car that fits within V8 Supercar's aero test figures is what we'll end up with. So what you see here might not necessarily be what we end up with as a race car.
While we're on the rear of the car too, there's a little bit of the flaring on the guards of the Altima. Luckily for you guys, and great DNA of the Nissan Altima, that's one of the few tweaks you've had to make to the car. There's no seam down the roof, it's the same size. Just a little bit of the flaring of the guards, and it probably does add to the stance of the car.
Yeah, we've worked very hard to keep the look of this race car all but identical to the road car. So as you mentioned, the actual length of the car is identical. We haven't tampered with that at all. We've just stretched the front guard slightly to fit within the wheelbase to centralise the front wheel. We've centred the rear, the bodywork on the rear centre line of the axle. So with the back of the car, we haven't had to stretch anything here. All we've had to do is slightly widen the rear of the car, which we had 10 or 15 different variations of how we do this flare. And what we've arrived at here is something that you'd really need to stare at to pick a difference to the road car. So the whole back of the car we haven't had to tamper with. The upper part of the quarter panel here, the boot lid, obviously the tail lights, the side bits of the bumper bar are exactly as the road car is, and all we've done is slightly modified the radius in here to fit with the rear opening that V8 Supercars need to fit within their rules. So to look at the back of the car, bumper bar, boot, quarter panel, windscreen position, roof skin, you would really struggle to pick any difference to what the road car is, which has it's really been a perfect fit for what it needs to be for a V8 supercar.
All right, we might go back to Aaron Noonan, who also is the official statistician of V8 Supercars too, so hopefully he doesn't hit us up with too hard of questions.
Now, I was going to ask Todd, you're obviously sidelined at the moment with your shoulder surgery, so you're out for the rest of 2012. How frustrating is it that you've got that fantastic car that you're leaning on, you're right there, you can see it, you can touch it, you can feel it, but you can't drive it? When can you finally get behind the wheel and you get the okay from the doctor?
Well, the operation went quite well. I went and saw the surgeon for the first time just a few days ago. It's been 3 weeks now, so I've only just got out of the sling today, so I'm not used to walking around with my arm as it normally is. There's absolutely no way I'll be allowed to drive the car or even a lawnmower for that fact until I've had 3 months from the point of the operation. So yeah, it won't be until early February that I jump in the car and drive it for the first time. But the good thing is, even though I'm missing a few races, which for an e-race car driver is pretty hard to deal with, I've never missed a race up until this point for my whole racing career, which has been 15 years. As a driver signed with Holden, I've been pretty crooked the odd round, but never actually missed a race through physical problem or sickness. So it is pretty hard, but in saying that, we're right in the middle of a huge era of our race team to get the first car built, and the following 3 or 4 for Clipsal. It's really quite a good time to be out of the car. There's more than enough work and distraction here for me not to think too much about not driving the car. The enthusiasm's amazing at the race team, so there's plenty to keep me focused on here, and I certainly can't wait to see this car drive out of pit lane. And it's a whole different perspective from seeing the car standing next to it to actually seeing it drive around on a racetrack. And most importantly, the thing I'm looking forward to the most is actually hearing the car run past the pit lane with the VK56 engine. That'll be pretty cool, but it'll certainly hit me when we get to the track and I can't jump in and have a steer, that's for sure.
Actually, speaking of drivers, Tim Blanchard's filling in for you at Jack Daniels Racing for the rest of the year. A question from Russell on the Nissan Australia Facebook page. When will the rest of the Nissan lineup be confirmed for next year?
That's a good question. Obviously, a lot of drivers are extremely keen to be part of Nissan Motorsport, to be part of a factory team. So the phone's been ringing red hot pretty much to fill the seats. It'll even be worse now that the car's been unveiled. I've already had a heap of texts from drivers saying well done on the car, it looks awesome. So we need to align the correct drivers. We've got some good drivers that are talking to us. We've got some great drivers that we've already got within the team, but we need to get the drivers that Nissan are happy with and our sponsors are happy with. So it's certainly not something that we want to rush into as the factory team. We want to make the right decision, but hopefully we can get something nutted out in the not too distant future, so all those guys, whoever they might be, are signed up and ready to start testing the car.
Speaking of testing the car, a question from Terry on Twitter. When do you get the tick from V8 Supercars so that you start proper testing? Obviously, with the other teams that have shown their 2013 race cars, the aerodynamics for those cars was already done by the V8 Supercars prototypes. In this instance, it'll be this car that does that homologation. So really a lot of questions today about when the car's going to run. It's really the first process of aero homologation, and then the testing starts. Is there any time frame on that at the moment?
Well, firstly, we could take this car to Winton in the next few days, even though it hasn't been aero tested, and still learn a huge amount about what we need to do to tune the car. A place like Winton, unlike Phillip Island, isn't that sensitive to aero, only probably one corner around the big left-hand sweeper, but that'd only be the last 5 or 10% that you'd actually need to get your head around at Winton. There's a huge amount with the whole geometry of the car, the transaxle, the end and rear end, how to play with a roll centre, what the spring changes mean. We really don't know any of that firsthand in a real life situation, so we can test the car and learn all that stuff straight away. As far as being able to go and do a high-speed test day at a track like Phillip Island, once we get to the aero test, if we do get sign off on our first attempt with all of the tools that we've got to tune the car, it'll be a matter of days to take whatever we've ended up with on the front bar and apply those changes to the mould, fix the mould, make a new front bar. Same with the rear end. Everything that we've got to try in the front bar for the aero test is all CAD drawn and CNC machined. So when we do arrive at that, it'll only be a matter of around a week from the aero test to actually rolling the car out in proper race spec homologated trim. So hopefully we'll be testing in the very near future.
Go to Adrian Mussolino. Any questions, Adrian?
What about the build for the other 3 cars? Obviously, the team runs 4 cars next season. How is that looking ahead to March?
Well, we're only a few weeks off having the second car into the paint shop. So 2 weeks into the paint shop, probably around a three, maybe 4 week, hopefully a 3-week build for the second car. And then we should have a car coming out of the paint shop every 3 to 4 weeks, and same out of the build shop, which is where we're standing right now. We only really need to get to in the short term. I like to keep the miles off my car and have it prepared just prior to Clipsal so I can jump into a brand new car. But yeah, all the hard work's been done. We've actually got 3 chassis that are near completed now. So yeah, we're certainly over the hump of the workload for the year.
Probably we're in the heart of Kelly Racing here. We should probably explain that. And this room here is the build room. And Aidan, who's sort of the manager of this project in a lot of ways, sits in a desk just over there. And there's a huge inventory of parts just behind this wall. And the man who's put a lot of this car together is James Brock, who a lot of people will know from racing. And over the years, these 2 guys build the cars in terms of the last fit with a lot of the mechanics in here. The fabricators in another shop out in the new section of Kelly Racing, they actually fabricate the chassis and a lot of the panels as well. There's also a machine shop, some paint shops. As Rick explained at the launch today, there's a lot of elements that come together. It's a bit different to the days where Dick Johnson could perhaps build his Falcon in the shed under his house. There's literally 19 departments all chipping in.
Yeah, and the good thing is, just behind us, through the door behind us, is we've got the whole design team, and within 30 metres of where we stand right now, you've got make this car a reality: machine shop, composite shop, paint shop, fabrication shop, sub-assembly shop, and Nissan engine shop. So if there's any issue or you've got a question when you're assembling the car, you're only a few steps away from another department. So the infrastructure here and the actual facility, which we only just finished earlier this year, really couldn't come any better time. It's really only just come in the nick of time to get the project completed. So it is pretty cool to have such a big facility and all of those departments on standby when you're building a car like this. There's no way you could attempt to do what we've done right here in the time frame without that at your fingertips.
All right, Aaron Noonan, question for Todd.
Yeah, Todd, you've got a pretty major inventory now from the last 4 years of Kelly Racing with your current Commodore style stuff. I think from memory you've got 6 cars, you've got engines, you've got all sorts of bits and pieces that you can't use next year. Do you have a garage sale at the end of the year? What do you do?
Oh, we're almost thinking about that. It's probably time you bought a car and had a bit of a crack at DVS. We could even supply a few spares. But yeah, after Homebush, we'll take all of the hold stuff down to our shed at Moorabbin and start converting the whole race team to Nissan. It's actually quite a large job. Things that you don't even think of, like all of the roll cabinets in the race transporters, every little cupboard, nook and cranny, valley locker in our 2B double transporters need to be brought back and completely stripped down, because most of the nuts and bolts that we've built up over the 4 years that we've had the team are specific to those cars. So then to refill trucks and stock them with all of these parts is going to be a huge job. So in the end of all that, we'll probably have a massive warehouse of parts down at Moorabbin that don't suit these cars. So a garage sale of some description is certainly on the cards, I would think.
Certainly a huge inventory there for a lot of teams, but particularly Kelly Racing, one of the few teams that will actually have engines to sell at the end of this year. That brings us to the end of today's Google Plus Hangout. Big thank you to Aaron Noonan from Big Pond and Channel 7 and Adrian Mussolino from V8X Magazine. Have a look for their articles on the Nissan Altima soon in outlets around the country. Big thanks, Todd Kelly. A huge thank you to the team here at Kelly Racing who've got this car together and worked extremely hard, particularly in the days leading up to the launch. Everyone at Nissan Australia cannot thank them enough for their efforts. And a big thank you to you, the fans. Your interaction's been fantastic in our journey to the grid, particularly today with the launch. The interaction on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Google Plus has been fantastic. Big thank you to Google as well for making this possible. Everyone stay tuned. There's a lot of news to come. We'll be seeing a lot more of this man, and hopefully we'll see him on the podium sometime soon. I'm sure a start in the Clipsal 500 is going to be an exciting time for you, the team, Nissan, everyone next year.
Thanks, Jordo. I hope everyone likes the car.
I'm sure they do. Thank you very much.